Kumlan and Ablat Gemara. This is the share of Dalad of Tanya, the Chavav Aleph. Tanya learns, I'm sure as it says, just like Truma establishes Kuna, Kach Maiserisha Chazak Kuna, so too Maiserishan also establishes that this person is a kohen. Now we know, generally speaking, we always think, we actually had a similar Gemara in Yavamas, that a kohen eats truma and all those things, and a Levi is entitled to meiser. But he says here that if there's a time that if we know that this person ate meiser, that's sufficient proof to say the person is a kohen. What's going on here? Then it says if someone is distributed by a bezin, ein a chazaka, doesn't prove anything, which is already odd. If a bezin that's kavua fixed in the city distributes truma to this person, and you can tell me that doesn't prove the person is a kohen, very difficult to understand. I think Gemara will explain. But let's first understand this thing about ma'aser establishes the person is a kohen. What's going on here? The Gemara asks, ma'aser addition to Levi. The reason ma'aser addition belongs to Levi. So Karabalazav and Azariah. What's the story? At the time we learned truma lekoyen ma'aser addition le Levi. Truma always belongs to kohen, and ma'aser addition was only for a Levi. Even Rabbi Akiva. Those are the words of Rabbi Akiva. However, Rabbi says, "My sedition af lekoyin." That my sedition, when the Torah gave it to Levi, wasn't to exclude the kohenim, it was also for a kohenim. Now, the base of this argument is very interesting in logic. It follows as follows. How do we understand a kohen? What's the role of a kohen? There's two ways of understanding. Are there three different segments in our population? You have Yisrael, and you have a Levi, and you have a kohen. Each one is independent from the next one. Or a kohen, because a kohen comes from the same tribe as a Levi, a kohen is a Levi plus one. And that's the machlekes. If you learn that a kohen is a Levi plus one, so whatever Levi is entitled to, a kohen is entitled to. Plus, he has all the additional things like truma and the chav dalad matanas and so on. But if you learn that a kohen is totally separate from a Levi, a kohen is not a Levi at all. A kohen is separate from a Levi, then a kohen is not entitled to ma'aser. A kohen has whatever they actually gave the kohen, and all the other things that belong to a Levi belong strictly to a Levi. And that's the machlekes of Akiva and Rabbi Elazar. However, there was a time when Ezra penalized the Levim because they refused to join him to go to Eretz Yisrael. So he penalized them. But what was the penalty? So it goes as follows. So the Gemara says, first thing I want to say, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is the one who says that ma'aser also belongs to a kohen. So if you see somebody eating ma'aser, that proves that that person's a kohen. Says the Gemara, but how does that prove a kohen? It could be a kohen or a Levi. According to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, either a kohen or a Levi is entitled to eat ma'aser. So if you see somebody eating ma'aser, well, how does that prove that this person is a kohen? Maybe this person is only a Levi. So the Gemara asks, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, a kohen, also a kohen. A kohen or a Levi, to say there's a kohen, not a Levi. Mi Amma, did he say that? So the Gemara says, yes. Ezra came and penalized the Levite. What was the penalty? So if you learn like Rabbi Akiva, there's a big machlekes term how to learn this pshat, but the simple pshat is as follows. If you learn like Rabbi Akiva, that prior to the Knas, the Leviim had ma'aser and the Kohanim had truma, so the penalty was that the Leviim no longer were the exclusive holders for ma'aser or receivers for ma'aser, recipients of ma'aser. Kohanim can also receive it. But if you learn like Elazar that prior to the Knas, Kohanim and Levim were able to receive ma'aser, so what was the penalty? The penalty was that only Kohanim can receive ma'aser. Therefore, if you see someone eating ma'aser, it must be a kohen. So Gemara explains. But yes, Basa the Kansu and Ezra, after Ezra penalized them, then it doesn't change. Says the Gemara, but even after Ezra concept, people are still used to the habit of giving to Levim, and it could very well be that people did give ma'aser to a Levi, even though there was a penalty that she gave to the kohen. They just did out of habit, or because they read the Torah, they weren't so knowledgeable, and so the Torah give it to a Levi. So how does that definitely conclusively prove that this person is a kohen? We also had in Mariyamas Machlekes if the penalty was to give it to kohenim, or was the penalty to give it to all poor, regardless who they are, even the Yisraelim, perhaps, according to some. Amar Chida, Yisrael Machlekes, if Yisrael is allowed to eat ma'aser. Amar Chida says, Hacha ma'aser, and we're talking about a case there. We're talking about a case here that we know for a fact that this father is a kohen. Now, what happened was as follows. We know for a fact that this guy's father was a kohen, but he was married to two women. And there was a rumor going around that one of the women there was a ben grusha chalutza, somebody who's not allowed to marry. So this child is a cholol, which means he's no longer entitled to any of the entitlements that a kohen is entitled to. But yet they saw that this person was receiving ma'aser. And since he was receiving ma'aser, and now that if he's a chol, he wouldn't be receiving it at all. Now that they saw him receiving ma'aser, must be that he's a kohen. We already knew he was a kohen. The question was whether he was a chol or not a chol. And because we saw that people were distributing ma'aser to him, that proves that this person is a kohen. That's the story over here. Says the Gemara, Levi, the lav, Levi who? What about Yeah, we can't say he's a Levi because his father was a Kohen. Definitely he's a Kohen or a Chol. There's only two choices. What's the problem? Ben Grusha Bechlutzu. The problem is that he might be Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza, right? That's the rumor, and therefore he's forfeited all his rights, all his entitlements. But then we saw him receiving a distribution from a warehouse. He's learned by the man on my station, the one who holds my station is forbidden to Yisraelim, and we see them giving to this person. Obviously, this person is a kohen, a full-fledged kohen, not a chol, because a chol means he's just like a Yisrael. The Layavale wouldn't have given it. Even if you hold the Ma'aseh edition is permitted to Yisrael to eat it, but that's only to eat it, not as far as distribution when they come to your warehouse. That Yisrael is allowed to eat it, but to satisfy your obligation of giving Ma'aseh, you haven't satisfied by giving it to Yisrael. Wouldn't have given it. So therefore, because we saw that this person, we knew definitely he comes from a family of Kohen. The question is his status. Chol or not a chol, and then we saw people distributing. That is sufficient proof that he is actually a kohen. The next part of the brayso was if you see a bezin distributing from a warehouse, it's not a good enough chazaka. Now that's odd because if a bezin does the proper investigation, who's our better authority than a bezin itself? What do you mean it's not a good chazaka? Even bezin will have a chazaka. Then hey chazaka, how do you ever establish anything if a court can't establish somebody's credentials? This is the case of it. Again, it's a unique case. A man was married to a few women, and part of the estate when he died was truma, and they were dividing amongst the brothers. And this brother also received his share of truma. And there was a rumor, however, that he was a chol. The fact that he received an inheritance, a distribution truma, that in this case will not prove that he's not a chol, that he's a real kohen. That's obvious. Because just because a chol doesn't inherit his father's estate, he'll get the truma and then he'll sell it. Why would we even think that because Bezin distributed the Yerusha and in there was truma that proves there's a kohen? If there's a rumor abounding that he's a cholol, the fact that he received part of the estate as truma proves nothing. So you want to know? I would have thought, but the brothers, when they receive the truma, what they can do? They weren't going to sell it. They would consume it. And if he got an equal distribution, we would have thought that it must be also for eating, because if it's for selling, let you give the entire truma to the brothers, give them something else. It must be then that he's for eating as well. And it doesn't mean that the bezin recognizes that this person is a proper kohen, not a chol. No. We don't go into that. We give them equal distribution. These people will eat it. These people will sell. It doesn't prove anything. So anyway, further, in our Mishnah, the beauty came along and said, we will not elevate or promote a kohen based on a single aid. In the Mishnah, we have Tanakama said that two people come along and each one testifies regarding the other person that they're a kohen. We trust them. We don't say that they're goyim, that they have some kind of a pact between them. Rabbi Yehuda says no, that we're not going to allow a kohen to be established based on the testimony of a single aid. And Rabbi Lazar says that depends only if there was allegations raised. If no allegations raised, we would trust a single aid. Says the Gemara. And then comes along Hashem Gamliel at the end of the Mishnah and says that we will maila the kahuna based on a single aid. We will be maila on a single aid. And l'chayda, he also says if there's no rumors about, but our rumors about, then you need more than one. Isn't Rabbi Shimon Gamliel saying exactly the same thing as Rabbi Lazar? Says the Gemara, Hashbag, Hainu Rabbi Lazar, aren't they saying the same thing? Because definitely, if there are rumors abounding that this person is not a kohen, a single aid is not going to do it. They'll need two aids. So if he says one aid is enough, must be there's no rumors. So that's actually what Rabbi Lazar said. Says the Gemara, the rumor itself. What do we treat a rumor? What's considered a rumor that we entertain the idea? Maybe there's some truth to it or not. Yeah, maybe the basis of their argument is a rumor that was established by a single aid is sufficient to be considered a rumor to destroy someone's reputation or not. Rabbi Lazar says, Rabbi Lazar holds a rumor by one person is sufficient to give enough credibility that it's going to ruin a person's life. And Rashbag says, Rashbag says, no, a single person proves nothing. You need a rumor based on two different people telling us the same story, that the rumor then has a basis to it. Says the Gemara, but didn't Rabbi Yechanan say, everyone holds, that rumors, if we are to accept rumors, a single person gossiping is not enough. We need two people, different places, coming with the same story. So there would be an argument there. So everyone says that in order for rumors to be established, two people. So what's the machlekes of Lazar and Shimon Gamliel? And if there's a rumor, you need two aidim to dispel it. And if there's no rumor, then one is sufficient. They're both saying the same thing. So what are they arguing about? This is the story. And this we raised it a few days ago. The father definitely is a kohen. We all know that. But there was a rumor abounding the Ben Grusha Ben Chalutzi that he married a woman who was a divorcee, and therefore, or a Chalutza, this son therefore is a Chalul. The Achtinu. So we demoted him. We stripped him from his kahuna because he's a Chalul. Then v'asa eid echad came along a single aid. I know that this person is a kohen, and therefore askinu. We elevated him. Now, even though we're going to talk about right now, once a bezin makes a psak, it's embarrassing for a bezin to change the psak or reverse the psak. But over here, as Taisel explains, he stepped down on his own. He stepped down on his own. It wasn't really a ruling of bezin. So, but then when a single aid came along and said it's not true, that he's definitely not a chol, so we officially promoted him to be a kohen. Then came along two people who said no, he's a chol. His mother was a divorcee. Look, we had no choice. And what we demoted him again. But then another single witness came along. He's definitely a full-fledged kohen. There's no chol there. So now, if you combine the first witness that came and the last witness that came, you have 2 against 2. And we had when 2 against 2, either it's a sveika deraisa or mahatayda. We follow the status quo. It's only a suffix derabbanan. So the Kuli Alma, everyone holds Mistarfin latest. Everyone agrees that you take the first witness and the last witness, even though they didn't come to court at the same time to testify. We'll combine the 2 witnesses. So now you have a situation of 2 against 2. What's the argument? The argument is, can the Bezin just keep on going back and forth? Bezin made a psak one way and then you reverse the psak the other way. When it's not a definitive reversal, because we don't know. You have 2 now against 2. And we already paskin when the 2 came and said that he's a Ben Gerusha. We said, oh, Chalul, we demoted him. Now come another person says 2 against 2, and if we wouldn't have known, we would have said let him continue the way he was, maybe. But now that if we demoted him, we passed that we stripped him from his kuna. Now another person came along. Should we, again promote him? Then the bezin looks like a mockery. So what about the covet of the bezin? How are people going to perceive the bezin? Once we demoted him, we don't put it back up because it's already twice that we demoted him. We don't just do it again. And that's what Rabbi Elazar Mishnah is saying here. Rabbi Elazar is saying on Mishnah is that only have 1 aid, but if another aid comes along, this whole situation, and we demoted him, we don't put him back based on the second aid. And we put him down. Let's forget about our covenant. We have to do justice, and therefore, if now we have 2 aid, we have 2 aid him. We'll put him back up based on 1 aid. Based this, when we say over here 1 aid, we're talking about a second 1 aid after there was a 2 aidim in between the interim. And that's what the argument is. If the second 1 aid, we're going to promote him or not. Rabbi Elazar says no, and Rashbag says yes. Ma'alim, we're going to promote him even based on 1 aid in this case. Maskil Ravasha asked the question. So I don't understand why you going to promote him. Even they would have come at the same time. 2 people said he is a chalul, and 2 people said he's not a chalul. Even it wasn't a question of Zulus of the Beidina, of stripping him and then promoting him and so on. Just 2 against 2. What do? We wouldn't let him be a kohen because 2 against 2. Or we say we would say that would leave things the way they are. What do you call it? So we would never have demoted him in the first place. Since you have 2, the question is, if you have 2 against 2, we would never have demoted him in the first place. The argument is, the question here is a different argument altogether. Do we actually combine? Do we have to have both witnesses coming at the same time? They saw an event together, but do we need them to come and testify at the same time? Or it's all right if one comes today and one comes tomorrow? And that's the argument. We're pluked at the Hani tonight. And the argument is based on the following tonight, which is a machlekes in the brisa. There are 2 arguments in the brisa. Argument number 1, which is not related to our case here, that is, in order testimony to be a valid testimony, they both have to see the event at the same time. If somebody says, I saw him borrow $100, and somebody else says, I heard the borrower tell me clearly that I owe him $100. We both didn't see the same thing, but we're both talking about the same event, but different times. So therefore, it's not valid according to Tanakama, because they both didn't see the same thing. However, the Shubha Kocha says, that what? Even if they didn't see it at the same time, but we're talking about the same event, we can combine the edus. That's number 1. Argument number 2. The ain edus was given by bezin, not Yiddish name. The edus is not established in the bezin until they both testify. Even if they both saw the same event, you need something else. They both have to come and testify at the same time. And Rabbi Nosson says, Shemi, which is Ayin, and Rabbi Nosson says, no, you can hear today, and then you can hear tomorrow. And so therefore the machlekes Rabbi Elazar Rab Shimon, whether we're Maila Peid Echad, is the machlekes of the Tanakama and Rab Nosson. And Rab Shimon Mil says like Rab Nosson that even though the single aid came later, not be worried about Zilus Beinin. The question is, are we going to listen to the second single aid because it didn't come together with the first single aid? And Rab Shimon says yes, because we combine the two testimonies. According to Tanakama, no. Says the Mishnah. The woman was kidnapped by goyim. Now depends why they kidnapped her. Al Yidei Mammon, let's say she owes money, or her husband owes money. They took her as for a ransom, or they took her as security to make sure that they get paid. Then with Teres Labaila, she permitted to her husband. We're going to assume they didn't molest her because they want to make sure they get paid. If they're going to hurt her, he's not going to pay them. But if they took, let's say, took her because the husband is Chai Misa, whatever it is, or because she did terrible things, Chai Misa, then they have no problem of abusing her. Asura Labaila, she cannot go back to her husband because they are not going to treat her with any respect or any dignity whatsoever, and so on. So the big machlek is a shaynim, very interesting machlek is a shaynim. What happens in this case, if she willingly, or Zerua and others, if she willingly, they're going to threaten her to kill her, so she willingly had relations with one of the goyim there to save her life, is that called berotzen? And therefore she's usher to her husband, even the husband is Yisrael, because she's a willing participant, or because the whole circumstance was that she was there to save her life. That's not called berotzen at all. So the simple proof that they bring that it is called berotzen is because of Esther. Esther said to Mordechai, now that she's going to live with Achashverosh willingly, even though she did it because she had no choice to save Klal Yisrael. Others say that Esther is different, and what do you call it? And they say that it is called, it's not called berotzen at all, because you look at the entire picture, the whole circumstance, and trying to save her life is considered an oinus from beginning to end, and she could go back to her husband. Big machlekes is showing them. Says the Gemara, when is this talking about? When the Eden were in control, so the going would behave themselves, and if they capture her to security to get paid, then we can trust that nothing untoward happened to her. The goyim are in control anyway. You think they care? There's definitely going to be some goyim there. They're going to abuse her, and therefore she cannot go back to her husband, the kohen, because we're going to assume. Even they took her just as security to get paid, to get prepaid or get reimbursed or whatever it is, we're going to assume the worst. And therefore, if her husband's a kohen, even though she was against her will, she was raped, she cannot go back to her husband. If they were in control, I feel even if it's just a question of money, asura labayla, she forbidden the husband. So Mosif Rabbi had a question. It says, "Hey, Yid Rabbi Yossi, HaKoyin V'Chayiv and HaKatzav." These two great Tanoim, they testified. Just the idiots. There's a whole bunch of missions there which talk about different things that Tanoim saw, and they testified regarding that. Abbas Yisrael, a Yiddish girl. This is so sad. Shehurana ba'Ashkelon. Someone had a debt to pay, and he used security. His wife. I mean, just think about this. He used his wife as security. Came to payment day, and it didn't have. So they took the wife as security. This was an arrangement that they made until he actually pays. Shehudana, it happened in Ashkelon, and Ashkelon is considered outside of Israel. Outside of Israel. So we were not in control. They were in control. And after they paid and she came back, the family decided to distance themselves from her. They didn't trust that she wasn't abused. Maybe they were kind, and therefore they didn't want to have anything to do with her. They came along witnesses that told us this story in the first place, that she was taken as a security. And then they said, nothing happened. They didn't abuse her whatsoever. And yet the family didn't refuse to believe the witnesses. The family, I don't understand. The only way you knew that she was taken as security because of these witnesses. But the same witness also told us, she did nothing happened. What do you mean you don't trust them? If you trust them that she was taken as security, then you trust them also that they didn't have her in seclusion. They never ever touched her. If you don't trust them in that respect, then how do you know she was security? Now, says the Gemara. The agent came along and said, nothing happened. Our question is, Ashkelon was Chutz La'aretz, or Rashi says, interesting, maybe Ashkelon was at Yisrael. But at that time, Eden already when Golos had no control over the destiny. The Yad Oivik, Kifalas, when the Goyim were in total control of themselves, Uktana, yet it says, Hudana, only Hudana, the Hudana is much worse then she was just taken captive. I mean, this was a planned, arrangement that they made from the beginning, which means that she was a willing participant, and therefore she went barotzitz. I can understand. Hurana, she'd be ushered to her husband because she's a willing participant. So and the laws are that if that's how it is, it seems in those days that you can use a woman as security, and therefore they can do whatever they want. And that's why we needed witnesses to tell us, but nothing really happened. They never touched her. But it sounds like nechbasha, if she was taken captive and there are no rules, then loy. Sorry, the other way around. It sounds like taken captive because she was not a willing participant at all, and nothing was arranged beforehand. Then we don't need Adim. Even without Adim, we can assume nothing happened. You said before that when the goyim were control, we always assume the worst, even when it comes to questions of debts. Here it seems the only reason why we're concerned that something happened is because of Hurana, and the law says that their laws were that that was the arrangement, and now she can be whatever you want with her, do whatever you want with her, and it's not illegal. So therefore, when you need Adim, nothing happened. But in the case where they took a captive, which is illegal, then we don't have to worry that anything happened. Yet you said before that Rav Shmuel, Rav Yitzchak said in the name of Rav that if it's for money and the goyim are in charge, you can't trust. So who makes no difference. Hurana or nechbasha. When the goyim are in control, we cannot trust them. We have to assume that she's asa to her husband if he's a kohen. But in my story, just telling you a story how it happened. That's one version. Version number two. Ikid the other say this is what happened. Same idea, but not the way the way our Gemara plays it out. But it came up like a question a little bit different. Rabbi says, after Rav Shmuel Rav Yitzchak said that when the goyim were in charge, it makes no difference whether it's for debt, whatever it is, that we have to assume the worst when it comes to a woman. For husbands, the kohen, she's asur. So Amar Rabbi, and regarding a Yisro, I told you Machlekes are showing him, is she considered willing because she's trying to save herself or not? Amar Rabbi, how we learned? Hey, so Rabbi is using now this this Mishnah we brought from Midias as a proof. Instead of a question and then an answer, but using a chatchila as a proof. And the proof is as follows. This is the other version, same Rabbah. And this was a pre-arrangement they had in Ashkelon that if they don't pay in time, she becomes the payment until they bring money. And the family didn't trust her because the Adam told them that this is what happened. And even though, despite the fact that Adam, even though the same Adam who said it happened told us that nothing untoward happened to her, they didn't trust. Said you should. If you trust the Adam when they said Shehurana, that she was taken, this is part of the arrangement, then trust them also nothing happened. If you don't trust them, then Al Taminu Shehurana, don't trust them. So now, this is my proof. What's the proof? Ashkelon that they mom and have it. In the case of Ashkelon, it's a case of money. And yet, the time the Adam, the only reason is because Adam testified. If it wouldn't have been witnesses testifying, loy. That what if it wouldn't have been for witnesses, we would assume the worst. Only because Adam said nothing happened, we assume the worst. And we're going to, even though the story happened was Hurana, we're going to say it makes no difference of Hurana or Mashkana when it comes to my lab. Loishna Hurana, the Loishna Nechbasha, that only because of Adam, it wouldn't be for Adam. We're talking about a debt here. If it wouldn't be for Adam, we wouldn't trust them. We would say something happened. Why? Must be because the goyim were in control. Ashkelon, Chutlaretz, or the time when Mongolos, the goyim in control. So this supports Rahab that if the goyim are in control, then even if they just took her as for debt, we cannot trust the goyim that they didn't touch her. So it's a proof. So in this version, the Gemara says it's not necessarily a proof. No, Hurana shiny. Maybe because this is a pre-arrangement, and therefore legally the goyim could do with it whatever they want. They like owned us as a slave, and therefore we need an agent to tell us something happened. But if it was not a pre-arrangement, if they took her, kidnapped her, then we don't have to assume the worst. If all they wanted was money, Hurana shiny. A third version, same idea, but a third version, which will go straight to the Mishnah. Ika the Rami Lamirma. Others ask as a question. Tanan in the Mishnah it says, our Mishnah says, in other words, this din of Rav Shmuel, Rav Yitzchak was actually an answer to a question. Our Mishnah said, if it's only for a debt, muteres labayla, we'll assume nothing happened. She can go back to her husband. He was a kohen. But I mean, that's a question. It says, hey, Yid Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi testified, and so on and so forth. Now what? That we needed Adam. Now Ashkelon, the mom, and this whole story is about a debt, and yet there we needed witnesses. Our Mishnah says we trust everything is all right, and there we said only because there were witnesses that nothing happened. Uktani time with the Adam, I said only because they had witnesses. Adam, I said there are no witnesses lie. Umashani, one answers, and now that the Shmuel of Yitzchak is actually an answer to this question. Omar Shmuel Yitzchak, Omar Lekash, in the name of Rav. This version does not say the name of Rav. Loikash. It's not a question. Kanji Yadi sold to keep Amish, no matter when the Eden were in control, the Goyim had to follow the rules. If it's only a debt, they wouldn't touch her. Kan, over there in the story of Ashkelon, she Yad the Gecham to keep the Goyim were in total control. And